Hey everybody, I just want to get this thought out of my head so I don't forget it. So I was thinking about perspectives, and a perspective that I had not considered before, but I'm now like just sharing it in this particular way. Okay, so when I was in my relationship with my fiance while he was alive, obviously, and I was completely in the love bubble, and I was in the engagement phase and loving all of the time that we were spending together and believing that everything was this happy, exciting, peaceful relationship. That's where my mindset was, okay? I did not know that all these other things were going on in reality, but during this process, everything that I knew about him and about us and about what we were building under the agreements that I thought we both had agreed to, meaning that we both believed in God, the God of Israel, we both believed in Jesus, we both were creating, quote, to the best of our understanding, biblical foundation. And again, this is best of our understanding at the time, because again, it's a process. And the point is, everything that I was doing on my end was about encouragement. Everything that I was doing was about inclusion. It was about building something that was positive. It was about not looking at his past, because he had told me in the beginning, I used to have this life of drugs and I've been clean and sober for 31 years. So the point is, I was not looking at him when he told me he was a drug addict. I wasn't going, oh no, you're a drug addict, I never want you because you're unclean or you're not that's not where I was coming from. I was coming from the heart of Jesus, and I'm going, I'm gonna love you regardless. I'm going to love you as long as I live, regardless of your past. Okay? So I was building my mindset and my heart with the heart of God, with the heart of Jesus, of loving, compassion, grace, peace, and acceptance. Okay? That's where we both were, at least to my understanding, but that's where I was at the beginning of the relationship. Now, when I physically, we're talking absolutely, caught him with my own eyes doing drugs in my home, okay, my name was on the lease. My head was on the chopping block. That if this type of behavior became a norm, I would be homeless on the street. That's when it became a personal, I'm setting boundaries, okay? Now the point is, when he moved in with me during COVID, it wasn't that was my ideal plan. It was what happened as of the fear and the anxiety of what was going on in the world. He had an apartment, I had an apartment. But when we chose to move in together, meaning he moved into my place, okay, there was a list of rules. There was a list of agreements. He had to sign it, and he did. And so the whole point is, he made an agreement that he was going to follow what the rules of the apartment were. And those rules were no drugs, no drinking, no smoking. All those rules were part of the apartment. Now, here's the point. When he asked about the smoking, because he was a smoker, okay, my response was, there will be no smoking inside the apartment, inside the house at all, period. That's the rule. If you must, as you go through your process of letting go of cigarettes, of letting go of your addiction, you may smoke outside. There will be designated trash ashtrays, and put that in the trash can. Like, there will be no throwing of the butts on the lawn. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, there was, if you're in this phase, this is how you do it, but you're not smoking inside the house. You're not smoking inside the apartment. So the point is, he agreed to those terms, okay? Now, mind you, my own father is a smoker. He has never quit, okay? So the point is, I know what it's like to be around a smoker. I know what it's like to love a person, want to have a conversation with a person, but because they're so in their addiction of smoking, it makes it very challenging. I have to undergo being around a smoker. My clothes smell, my hair smells, I'm coughing, I've got days of like the symptoms of strep or bronchitis because of being around someone who smokes to that volume. The point is, I don't like it personally, but will I and have I over the years sacrificed my preferences in order to have serious conversations that I need to have with my dad, that I know he wants that, ninny in his mouth, the cigarette, over and over again, because he can't think or process things without the cigarette. So the point is, in those circumstances, I would be outside with my dad having these conversations, or inside his home where he smokes inside having these conversations. And as soon as I left the premises, I couldn't wait to go home and take a shower and get rid of the clothes and wash them, because I stunk after hours of being around someone who's a chain smoker. Now again, my preference is I hate smoking, okay? But the bottom line is, in this scenario where I'm engaged to somebody who is a smoker, who's telling me I'm in the process of quitting, I will be a non-smoker by the time we get married. That was his agreement to me. It wasn't something that that I was policing. It was something that he determined within himself, okay? But the rules of the apartment, the rules of the home were rules, and they needed to be followed, okay? Now, when I caught him doing drugs, and I mean literally snorting all kinds of powder on my dryer, and he was caught red-handed, okay, at that point, that's where the boundary line was drawn. And I said, here's the deal. What you choose to do to yourself, what you choose to do wherever else you do it, that's on you, and that's between you and God. But here in my home, in my place that you made an agreement, there's no drugs here. You're not doing drugs here. You're not housing drugs here. You're not participating in drugs here. This is my home. There will be no drugs. The point is, when I caught him, there was a strong line drawn, okay? And that line was, get out. Now, with that, the first thing he went to grab was his, quote, medicine bag, which had his drugs in it and had his pills in it. Because now I understand that all the pills that he was crushing them up and snorting them. But what he put in the pill container, if it said that it was this, whatever, it could have been a street drug in there. And that's what I'm starting to understand, that everything was a facade. It might have appeared like he was taking a, doctor prescribed drug for his sleep disorder, but in reality, he was snorting heroin. But I did not inspect the bottles and take out all the things to see, is this what it is? Because I'm not I'm not a drug police, okay? I was too busy trying to, live my life and serve my ministry. I didn't have time for that kind of nonsense. But the point is, when I found out that he was doing it, okay, that's where the line was drawn. And at that point, I took all his stuff, I put it outside, and I said, you can come pick up your stuff. Now, I neatly packed everything. I had everything organized and labeled and made it so he could find his stuff easily. I wasn't a total jerk. I did it in the nicest way that I could do it. But the point of the matter is, when that line was drawn, okay, it was because he disobeyed what the agreements were. He violated the living agreements that was going to kick both of us out because of his behavior. And that's when I said, this is my home. You're not making me homeless because of your addiction. Now, if I was playing the role of martyr, okay, and I was being, quote, a people pleaser, I might have just said, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to continue to love him and let him kick us out, and then we'll both be homeless. That's being, quote, a people pleaser. That's being the type of person that if you're in Al-Anon, that's a doormat. That's somebody that doesn't have any convictions or is just trying to save the relationship, and they don't want to, say anything that might be offensive. They just want to keep the peace, even if that peace means they're going to become homeless too. Well, that's not the reality. I didn't work as hard as I worked to have a place to be kicked out and become homeless because of his drug addiction. That doesn't make any sense. Now, on another hand, just so that we're clear, okay, I personally don't have a drug addiction. I don't have an alcohol addiction. So for me, okay, I would prefer to go to Al-Anon, which is a 12-step for, people to talk about their feelings and talk about dealing with an alcoholic or dealing with an addict and learning how to, manage your own behavior instead of worried about the addict and what they're doing. That's the meeting that I would prefer to go to, okay? But because he was so needy, because he was the broken vessel, and this is clear after he was in the relapse, in the drug addiction, okay? Before that, he didn't have a car, so I was driving him to his NA meetings, okay? And I was driving him to 2 meetings a day. That's a lot of driving, especially when they're all over the town. They're not in one easy, convenient place. But the point is, I drove him. I sacrificed my personal well-being and my business needs to get him to 2 meetings a day. And I did that for 6 months. The norm is to do that for somebody for 90 days, okay? But I did that for 6 months, every day, driving him to 2 meetings a day, okay? That means that, he could have, he could have had that responsibility on himself, but I was loving and compassionate enough to say, hey, I will help you in the getting you to the rides to get to your meetings, okay? And I did see that when he went to meetings, he was better off. But here's the point. I would have preferred to go to my own meetings that had nothing to do with drugs and alcohol, because I'm not a drug addict and I'm not an alcoholic. And all of those meetings, when they're talking about all their relapses and all the drugs that they preferred and their past life, it's like they sit in it, they live in it, it's like they revel in it. And it's like, I didn't want to hear about all that stuff. But the point is, I spent a lot of time in those meetings to understand what an addict goes through, what an alcoholic goes through. I didn't understand those things before I started attending those meetings. I started to have a different level of compassion for what he was going through. It doesn't mean I was endorsing what his bad behavior was, no. I still had those strong boundaries, and I was still being encouraging to stop the behavior. But the point is, when I sat in those rooms and heard the insanity that goes on in real life with addicts and alcoholics, I was like, wow, And then we would have other conversations about what the topic was of that meeting. But the point was that my preference? No, I wanted to go to my own meeting that had nothing to do with alcoholics and addicts. I wanted to learn how to get better communication skills. I wanted to learn how to deal with myself. But the point is, I sacrificed what I wanted for Ann, and I went to the needs of what was best for Eric, what was best for him, so that he would have more peace, okay? Now, in the end, okay, he was on that outside, okay, because I told him, you violated the rules, you're no longer welcome to live in this apartment or live with me, and that's the consequence of your behavior. This is the real life consequence of you doing drugs. And I said to him, I love you, I'm going to continue to pray for you, to be, in support of you, to have victory, and I will help you write a resume, I'll help you, take you to a job interview, I will do the things that will help you along your journey. But I'm not endorsing you doing drugs. I'm not going to, be for you doing drugs. I'm going to be against you doing drugs, okay? I'm going to have a hard position on that because him doing drugs is not helping anybody, okay? Now, here's the bottom line. In the end, he continued to choose to do drugs.